Junction with Major League Baseball Productions. We're bringing you a look at some of the highlights and great moments of the game of baseball. Today we're going to take a look at the beginning of the national pastime. When we say beginning, we go right back to, was it Abner Doubleday that started the game of Major League Baseball? Or was it Alexander Cartwright, Ty Cobb, Pete Rose in his chase of Ty Cobb's all-time hit record, and also the great Walter Johnson? Those are just some of the names that will crop up during the course of the next half hour on baseball's greatest hits.
From the early 1800s to the present day, baseball has been a part of America. The traditions of baseball have been passed on, and each new generation inherits the standards and records of the past. A form of baseball had been played by American youth since the colonial days, and it can be said with certainty that while he may have played the game as a boy in Cooperstown, New York, General Abner Doubleday did not invent baseball. In fact, it was a land surveyor who created the game. In 1845, Alexander Cartwright compiled a set of rules for the New York Knickerbockers. The bases would be 90 feet apart, each side would have 9 men, and each inning 3 outs. In 1869, the Cincinnati Red Stockings became baseball's first professional team, and 7 years later, the National League was formed. The league's first ball game was played between Boston and Philadelphia, and with that game came the initial recording of events, statistics, and records that would fill endless pages in the game's rich history. The Chicago Cubs won baseball's first pennant, led by pitcher Albert Goodwill Spaulding. By 1880, the sport had spread to all 38 states, and the game's colorful professionals were followed with an astuteness only baseball could demand. Paying customers cheered the early greats, men like Cap Anson, the leading hitter of his time, Mike King Kelly, famed for his daring and inventive slides, and powerful Ed Delahanty, his career cut short by a fatal spill off Niagara Falls. At the turn of the century, baseball had become the nation's game, and each city had its own ballpark. In 1901, Ban Johnson established a new league, the American League. Johnson struggled to put the league together, often raiding players from National League clubs, thus starting long-standing feuds, including one with the National League champion Baltimore Orioles and a fiery young third baseman named John McGraw. Later, as manager of the New York Giants, McGraw refused to compete in the 1904 World Series against Johnson's American League winners. But McGraw held out for only 1 year. In 1905, the Philadelphia Athletics, led by Connie Mack, won the American League pennant, and public opinion forced McGraw and his National League champions to relent. Two years earlier, Boston had beaten Pittsburgh 5 out of 8 in the first World Series. In 1905, the format changed to 4 out of 7, and fans flocked to the Polo Grounds. Although no World Series was played in 1904, the stubborn McGraw delighted his following by raising a flag inscribed New York Giants 1904 World Champions. The Athletics of 1905 were a solid team under Cornelius McGillicuddy, Connie Mack, but they lost the World Series to McGraw's Giants in 5 games because the New Yorkers had on their side the greatest pitcher of the day, Christy Mathewson, a 25-year-old college graduate with pinpoint control. During the season, Mathewson led the major leagues with 31 wins and a 1.27 earned run average, and then topped that off in the World Series by pitching 3 shutouts. The 1905 World Series was a triumph for the Giants and Mathewson, and after the final game, the team celebrated by taking a victory lap around the Polo Grounds and that remarkable new invention, the horseless carriage.
seen him much.
Yeah, he's doing a whole lot better.
Well, you know, the accident.
Yeah, well, there's no keeping him down.
No kidding.
You know, he's been going back to St. David's. They're helping him get up and around again.
You think he'll be back to work?
Oh, yeah, he will.
I wouldn't have known what to do.
Well, I called an ambulance.
And then freaked out.
But I couldn't. It was my daughter. Our doctor met us there.
Where?
Well, it was my choice, so I asked for St. David's.
Are you still running the bill-paying obstacle course? Scaling mountains of paperwork? Dodging delicately balanced checkbooks? Getting licked by stamps? You don't have to. With Cash Action Plus, all you need to pay your bills is a touch-tone phone. You just punch in the amount you owe and who you owe it to. First Federal does the rest because you've got better things to do. First Federal Savings. Banking so easy, you hardly have to lift a finger.
Imagine being on location with ESPN at events from around the world. Places you dream about. Now you can be there when ESPN takes you on World Tour. The first stop on the tour is the French Open. And your chance to be there with us in Paris is your entry in the World Tour sweepstakes. To enter, watch any of ESPN's tennis events in April. Catch the World Tour winning slogan that will be announced during the event. Write it on a card with your name and address and mail to World Tour Sweepstakes, Post Office Box 1132, Ridgely, Maryland 21683. That's World Tour Sweepstakes, Post Office Box 1132, Ridgely, Maryland 21683. That entry will qualify you for the grand prize of a trip for two to the French Open. And that's only one stop on ESPN's World Tour.
In the early decades of the 20th century, Americans found more leisure time, so they rushed to the ballpark to see stars like Cy Young, who at his 22-year career won a staggering 511 games. Another outstanding pitcher was Walter Johnson of the Washington Senators. From 1910 to 1919, Johnson won 20 or more for a team never strong at bat. He became known as the Big Train for a fastball that would help him record more strikeouts, 3,508, and more shutouts, 113, than any pitcher in baseball history, and was second only to Cy Young in games won. Despite the awe he instilled in the opposition, Johnson was as modest and gentle-tempered a man as ever played the game. And throughout his 28-year career as pitcher and manager, Johnson was always well-liked and respected.
Walter Johnson and the number 3,508 were to be the main byword when it came to the word strikeout during the course of Major League Baseball in the first half of the 19th century. But then come the 1970s and 80s, that record finally came under close scrutiny because of two other names, Steve Carlton and Nolan Ryan. Carlton, the backbone of the Philadelphia Phil's pitching staff after coming over from the St. Louis Cardinals, along with Ryan, both bore in on that record during the 1984 season. And finally, it was Ryan who started his career with the New York Mets and broke the record with the Houston Astros, who bested 3,508 against the Montreal Expos. But for Nolan Ryan, records were not his main reason for playing the game of baseball.
You know, I look at records as a gauge for judging people and judge people's accomplishments by existing records. And I'm not really record-oriented. If I've had the opportunity to break some records, and I feel very fortunate about that. I feel like I've been very blessed in my career. But I really don't set goals to try to achieve records.
Equally admired was the Flying Dutchman of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Honus Wagner. At shortstop, Wagner had no peer, and at bat, he used the great strength of his forearms to win 8 batting titles over the span of 12 seasons. On the base paths, he led the league in stolen bases 5 times. Wagner was only 5'11", but weighed more than 200 pounds, and although not graceful, he was the most complete ball player of his time. This famous split grip belongs to baseball's all-time batting leader, Ty Cobb. The accomplishments of the Georgia Peach are as impressive today as they were more than half a century ago. Over the course of 24 years, Cobb set Major League career standards for games played, base hits, runs scored, and stolen bases. And his lifetime batting average of .367 is the highest in the game's history, and more than 100 points above the entire league's average during the same period. Cobb's genial appearance belied a fiercely combative nature. He had few friends in the game, but no one denied his greatness.
The great Ty Cobb and 4,191 hits. That figure, it seemed, would never be approached in Major League Baseball after Cobb reached that record during his career. That is, until the 1980s, when Charlie Hustle came along. Pete Rose, the man who relentlessly approached the record of Ty Cobb, was a man who studied Ty Cobb. Rose, who began his career with the Cincinnati Reds and then went back to Cincinnati during the 1980s, looked at Cobb as a unique individual and a man who certainly deserved the respect that he gained.
Wade always told me that Ty Cobb was the meanest individual he's ever met or seen in his life. And he meant mean and fighting. He said he was the toughest individual he's ever seen. Because I even made the statement to Wade that, do you think Ty would go around the bases today and point at pitchers and yell at them and slide and sharpen his spikes and stuff like that? And he said, yeah. I said, well, he'd be fighting every day. He said, that's all right, he'd be kicking somebody's butt every day. You know, Ty was a pretty big man. He's 6'2", something, 190-some pounds. And he was just a very fierce competitor and very mean guy. Not nasty. I'm not saying nasty. I'm just saying he just loved to fight. He didn't mind fighting. And that's the way he approached the game.
Even though Pete Rose played in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was almost as if he was a throwback to the years of the beginning of the game of baseball, to the Ty Cobb years. And Ty Cobb was not the only major star in those years. There was Tris Speaker and others.
Staunch competition came from the Boston Red Sox' Tris Speaker, who played the shallowest but most complete center field of the day, and at bat compiled a .344 lifetime average. Another leading player of the era was Rabbit Moranville, the Boston Braves' brilliant shortstop. In 1914, on the eve of World War I, Moranville led the Braves from last place in mid-July to a World Series sweep over the Athletics in October. Thus, the Miracle Braves of 1914.
Bud Light. If you just ask for a light beer, you never know what you'll get.
Case of light? No, Bud Light.
So if you want the less filling light beer with the first name and taste, don't just ask for a light beer.
Give me light.
Ask them to bring out their best.
A Bud Light.
Bud Light. Because everything else
Thanks.
is just a light.
For Players Club International, Mr. Telly Savalas.
You know, I love the excitement in Atlantic City and Las Vegas, and okay, I get VIP treatment. Now, you too can get VIP treatment and big savings just by carrying the Players Club Gold Card. You too can save 25 to 60% off rooms, 25 to 50% off top-name entertainment, always 25% off food and beverages. In Atlantic City, use your Players Club Gold Card at Harris Marina, Resorts International, Trump Plaza, the Sands. In Vegas, use it at the Riviera, Frontier, Sahara, Sands, the Mint. Hey, no strings attached to get the club's benefits. You listen to Telly? Call Players Club today.
Call me now. I'll send you all the information you need about Players Club. And if you join now, you'll receive this handsome travel wallet absolutely free.
Call 1-800-544-1000 now. That's 1-800-544-1000.
In 1919, Joe Jackson and the Chicago White Sox won the American League pennant. Jackson hit .351. Another great season for the man with the third highest lifetime average in baseball. That same year, the White Sox' Ed Cicotti was the major's leading hurler with 29 wins. The Sox were in the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds, and the experts favored Chicago. But Cincinnati surprised the country by winning. The following year, America was even more surprised by what it learned from an investigation led by baseball commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis. Jackson, Cicotti, and 6 others had conspired to throw the series. The Black Sox scandal of 1919 threatened to destroy the game. But Judge Landis took strong action. The accused were banned from baseball for life, and the game's integrity was restored.
It is my belief that baseball is loved by an entire nation because it embodies that priceless spirit of equality that is the very backbone of America itself.
A new baseball era was in the making, and a young left-handed pitcher for the Boston Red Sox was leading the way, George Herman Ruth. His schooling came from the streets, cheap saloons, and a Baltimore orphanage. But the Babe had a bubbling, outgoing personality that would soon claim the overwhelming affection of the American public. In 1916, at the age of 21, Babe Ruth won 23 games, becoming the best left-hander in the league. But his mound success was merely a prelude to his skill at bat. The Red Sox converted Ruth into an outfielder, and baseball was in for a revolution. In 1920, the New York Yankees purchased Ruth's contract from Boston. They wanted him to hit home runs in the Polo Grounds, the park they shared with the Giants. Babe hit 54 and then 59 the next year. In 1923, Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built, was opened, enabling more than 70,000 fans to see baseball's new star. The fans turned out to watch the Bambino, and he provided them with some of the greatest sports thrills America has ever experienced. No one hit them farther. No one hit them more often. And no one hit them like Babe Ruth. He lived as a genuine legend, a king if America ever had one. Despite his incredible fame, the Babe always found time for his biggest fans, children, and he spoke their language. Ruth led New York to 6 pennants in 8 years as he founded a Yankee empire. With the addition of Lou Gehrig, the slugging young first baseman from Columbia University, the already potent Yankee lineup was transformed into Murderer's Row. In 1927, Gehrig and Ruth put New York in a frenzy with an incredible home run race. Gehrig hit 46 through August, Ruth 43. But Gehrig hit only one more in September, while the Babe blasted 17, giving him the magical record 60. 1927 was a great year for the Yankees, Ruth, and Gehrig. The team won 110 games and the World Series. Ruth had 60 homers, and Gehrig 175 RBIs, the most powerful 1-2 punch in baseball history. Gehrig went on to play in more than 2,000 consecutive games. And Babe Ruth roared through the 20s with a style uniquely his own.
Like to draw or paint or maybe just sketch or doodle? Well, if you do, chances are you have the interest needed to become a serious art student. And here's how you can find out. By simply calling toll-free Art Instruction Schools will send you without cost or obligation this enjoyable art test. You take it at home in your spare time, and when you've finished, you simply mail it in.